Hello, listeners. As an enhancement to your listening experience, I am now going to present these archive episodes unedited in their entirety, which includes all of my afterthoughts. So, continue listening after the outro music if you want to hear what I thought of the episode. And if you're enjoying the podcast, please support it by going to the homepage, spacerockethistory.com, and clicking on the orange donate button or the Patreon link. And now I can also accept Zelle and Venmo. Just use my email address, spacerockethistory@gmail.com. Thanks.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
Godspeed, John Glenn.
Roger, 0G, and I feel fine.
Getting my feet out. Okay, I'm out.
How does it feel for the United States to be the new record holder?
At last, huh? When that baby lights, there's no doubt about it.
Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11.
Listen, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Hello and welcome. This is Michael Annis, and you're listening to episode 264 of the Space Rocket History Podcast. And now, Apollo 13, orbit, translunar injection, docking, and extraction.
I'm going to start training for 16, I'm sure. Yeah.
Go, sir.
Training for 16, looking for Chuck Berry, the doctor.
And what's the story on engine 5?
Jim, Houston, we don't have a story on why the inboard out was early, but the...
Apparently had an early shutdown on the inboard. I'm not sure if he's talking the second stage or not. Actually, a second stage is capable of compensating unless it was a very early. Oh, yes, yes, indeed. That's an interesting thing, in fact.
6 minutes, 40 seconds. It's still looking good. Your gimbals are good. Trim is good.
The 5 engines of the first stage, of course, are required to complete the total mission, but if one of those fails at a certain point in time, the other 4 can maintain enough lift for the vehicle to continue on.
Time 8 plus 3.8 nominal. S2 cutoff time 9er plus 4.8. Over.
Roger, nominal on the level sensor, 9er 48 on the S2 cutoff.
That's affirmative, and stand by for S4B to orbit. Mark, you have S4B to orbit, Jim.
Roger, we have S4B to orbit.
They're now about
We still have 4
111.
good engines on the Saturn second stage. We show an altitude of 96 nautical miles, 545 downrange.
It's a little over 600 statute miles downrange.
And at 7 minutes, 45 seconds, booster reports we are go. All 4 engines remaining, looking good.
Great.
The early shutdown of the center engine would cause no problem. We would burn a little bit longer than normally scheduled. Houston looking good at 8 minutes.
13, Roger.
That is the inboard of the second stage. Yeah, it just means you burn longer on the remaining 4 engines. The same propellant, of course, is available. So you just run it through 4 engines in lieu of the 5th. The 5th engine has shut down. It's not wasting fuel, in other words. If another shut down now, though, they'd make it a rather bad day. They wouldn't. Yeah. So the S4B might get them into orbit. It would not have enough fuel left for the lunar mission.
All 4 remaining engines
That's what they meant by the S4B capability. Yeah.
I apologize for that audio skipping. The liftoff of Apollo 13 occurred at 13:13 Central Daylight Time and proceeded uneventfully through first stage. The 5 engines of the second stage of the Saturn V ignited and burned smoothly for 5.5 minutes. Then the center engine unexpectedly shut down. Milt Windier's team at Mission Control quickly reviewed the status of the remaining 4 engines, ran the computations for the new engine cutoff times, and passed them to the crew. But why did the second stage center engine shut down early? Here's Fred Hayes answering that question.
At any rate, the center engine failed. And the reason it failed, this pogo effect, is a fluid flow instability. So it ended up basically chugging, if you want to look at it that way. But the chugging was of a degree that it was causing what's called a pogo effect, like being on a jackhammer. It really wasn't that severe in the capsule. It was not, we could feel this chattering, and then the light came on. We had an array of 5 lights, and that center light went out, which told us that engine had quit. I talked to the Dick Smith, the program manager at Marshall later. He said it probably wouldn't have taken too many more cycles before it would have broke the structure. It was sitting on a cross structure in that center stage, and would have had a much bigger bang right there. The critical issue then was, though, to get to orbit, we had to use just the 4 engines burning and burn much longer, including the third stage portion of that, because it was ignited then after you separated the second stage to really get you fully in orbit. So it consumed more fuel than normally it would. We had the longest time of launch to insertion of any of the flights. But it didn't take long. The people on the ground did the calculations on the propellant and figured we had enough margin, I don't know how many seconds, but enough margin to ignite it again and make that maneuver using the engine to accelerate to 25,000 miles an hour and get on our way. So it really, toward a sense of the mission, it had really no effect.
When the second stage engines finally shut down, the S-4B stage ignited and pushed the spacecraft to orbit.
And S4 ignition, Houston.
Roger that, Jim. Thrust looks good.
Roger.
13 Houston, you're looking good. Trajectory, guidance, CMC are all go.
Thank you, Joe.
And at 10 minutes 30 seconds, we are now 102 miles in altitude, 1,080 miles downrange.
13 Houston at 11 minutes, your go. Predicted cutoff on the S4B is 12 plus 34, over. Apollo 13 Houston, your go at 11 and a half, and predicted cutoff time is 12 plus 34, over.
Understand, 12 plus 34 predicted cutoff time.
That's a firm.
Coming up on 12 minutes, still looking good. We're standing by now for a crew report of third stage shutdown.
SECO.
Copy SECO, Jim. We're looking at the diski.
Roger.
And the flight dynamics officer says at first glance we look good on the orbit.
Apollo 13 Houston, you have a go orbit, all sources, and the booster is safe, over.
Go orbit and the booster is safe. Thank you, Joe.
Don't mention it.
The booster engineer reports at this time that the S-4B third stage looks good, being configured now for orbital operations. We're standing by for a confirmation from the flight dynamics officer of our preliminary orbit.
FIDO confirmation was good, and Apollo 13 was now in orbit.
Apollo 13 Houston, your preliminary orbit down here is 102.5 times 100.3, and everything is looking good.
Roger, Houston, and it looks good to be up here again.
I'll bet.
This is Mission Control at 17 minutes. We've had loss of signal with the spacecraft. We'll be reacquiring shortly through the Canary Island tracking station. The total burn duration on the third stage was about 45 seconds longer than planned. We would not expect at this point that this would have any serious effect on the translunar injection. The fact that we did consume a bit more propellant out of the third stage than was originally planned. We're standing by now for acquisition of signal through the Canary Island station. We should be reacquiring radio contact with the spacecraft shortly.
Have you ever wondered what it would feel like to ride the Saturn V to Earth orbit? Well, for Swigert and Hayes, neither of whom had been in space before, the experiences of launch and orbit were brand new and exciting. Here is a clip of Fred Hayes describing his launch experience on the mighty Saturn V.
Well, I guess I'd say it really doesn't give you a fast getaway. Even though there's 5 engines that generate a lot of thrust, the entire stack weighs a lot. So it really doesn't move up and away very fast. Like, you'd get more of a kick in the pants if you were in a fighter airplane with an afterburner and you popped it in the burner to go down the runway. You'd feel bigger. But it keeps building the pressure or the G's, pressing you into the couch, because it's getting lighter. Every second it's burning tons of LOX and RP1, which was the propellant of that first stage. So you're getting lighter as it's going up, and G's build to about 4.5 G's. They actually shut down on purpose the center engine early to maintain that G level, so you don't get about 4.5 at burnout, where the Saturn V first stage ends its job and that you're separated and you go away. Now, it's quite a jolt when it quits. It's instant from the thrust it's producing at that point in time, which is built up to that level. If you weren't strapped in, you'd hit the instrument panel when that happens. The other unusual sensation from being a fighter pilot is the couches we laid in were suspended on actually shock absorbers, if you will, struts, and weren't tied on the sides, so that the couches we lay in could move quite a bit. And the way that the engine's gimbaled to steer the rocket, it gave us a lot of rocking around in the capsule because we're way up on top, which probably exaggerated that motion. So you got a lot of jerking around in the capsule going uphill on that first stage.
For Lovell, making his 4th trip atop a rocket and his 2nd trip atop the massive Saturn V, it was little more than a return to business. After the Command and Service Module orbital checkout and updating of the trajectory parameters, the next critical maneuver was the Translunar injection burn. Flight Director Windier gave the go for TLI. Mission Control heaved a sigh of relief, thinking that they had gotten through what probably would be the one major glitch in the mission.
The crew is rather quiet at this time, preparing for that translunar injection burn. The burn again scheduled to begin at 2 hours, 35 minutes, 44 seconds. The predicted duration of the burn is 5 minutes, 47 seconds. And we expect that the spacecraft and S-4B will accelerate some 10,417 feet per second as a result of that maneuver. We will not get data from the burn. We'll be out of acquisition with the spacecraft at the time the maneuver occurs. 3 Araya aircraft, Apollo range instrumented aircraft, are stationed in the ground track off the coast of Australia, underneath the point on Earth where the translunar injection burn will be occurring. And they'll be recording data from it, which we could play back somewhat later if necessary. We expect communications will continue to be somewhat noisy during the time that conversation from the spacecraft is being relayed through the Araya aircraft. We're now just a little more than 1 minute away from the scheduled beginning of that burn.
Houston.
Copy that, Jim. Good deal.
Copy that, Jim. Good deal.
Jim Lovell reports we have ignition. Lovell's report would indicate we had very close to on-time ignition. The total burn duration should be about 5 minutes, 47 seconds.
Okay, so far.
Houston, roger. Jim Lovell just reported that everything looks good with that burn. We're still about 7 minutes away from reacquiring the spacecraft through the station at Hawaii, at which time we'll get our first good look at the trajectory as a result of this burn. We're now 3.5 minutes into the translunar injection burn, some 2 minutes 17 seconds remaining in the maneuver, which will start Apollo 13 en route to the moon. Now about 20 seconds away from the scheduled shutdown time. Jim Lovell reported a few moments ago that they're experiencing a bit of vibration on the S4B. Previous crews have also reported a similar experience toward the end of the burn.
Engine off. Engine off.
Houston, copy. Engine off.
Lovell's report of engine off came about 5 or 6 seconds after the pre-planned time.
Hawaii in 3 minutes. And 13 Houston, the booster reports that everything looks good with the S4.
Sounds good, Houston. The ride was very nominal. We had a little vibration, though, during most of the run.
Okay, we copied your call on that, Jim.
Okay, Joe, the Disky read 35560 plus 04445 plus 01769er, and Delta BC was minus 3.0.
Oh, roger that. You can't ask for much better than that. How about the burn time, did you notice?
Okay, on my trusty watch, I had about 3 3/4 seconds long.
Okay, copy that.
With the astronauts now on course to the moon, it was time to separate the Command Module Service Module from the S4B and to pull out the lunar module from the top of the third stage.
This is Mission Control. We're now at 2 hours 54 minutes with the crew preparing for the CSM separation from the S4B, the subsequent docking with the lunar module, and the ejection of the LEM and command module from the Saturn third stage. The times of all of those events are almost precisely as indicated in the flight plan. The separation maneuver is scheduled to occur at ground elapsed time of 3 hours 6 minutes 37 seconds, and the docking would come then with the LEM at 3 hours 16 minutes ground elapsed time. Our displays in Mission Control are showing the effects of the translunar injection burn. We currently show the spacecraft at an altitude of 1,183 nautical miles, traveling at a velocity of 31,406 feet per second.
And now, the uninterrupted separation, transposition, and docking of Apollo 13.
Okay, Houston 13, we have a go for fire alarm.
13 Houston, affirmative. Your go for pyro arm, and recommend you secure the cabin pressurization.
We did. We closed the waste management vent valve there. Waste storage valve.
Okay, we're reading 6 psi in the cabin, Jay.
Roger, Joe. Thank you very much.
Telemetry data here on the ground indicates that the spacecraft has separated from the S4B. Astronaut Jack Swigert at this time would be in the commander's couch, the left-hand couch, at the controls of the spacecraft during the transposition and docking maneuvers. And we should be getting television transmissions from the spacecraft beginning at about 3 hours 15 minutes ground elapsed time.
That's quite a bang, Joe. We're separated. We've pitched around about 60 degrees now.
Roger, Jack. We see you pitching.
Okay, we got the slough panels. One of them's out front now.
So.
Swigert reporting that the slough panels on the S4B are coming into view.
Got the S4B.
guess we're about 80 feet.
Good deal.
Okay, I'm going to come on with the TV now, Joe.
Okay, Fred, we're waiting for it.
The network controller reports we're getting television signals now from the spacecraft a bit earlier than expected. The crew is apparently somewhat ahead of the timeline in the transposition and docking maneuver. We'll stand by for a television picture.
13 Houston, we got a groovy TV picture. Sounds good.
We're looking down the nose of the S4B minus its slaw panels at this time. Top view of the LEM. At last report, Swigert said they were 80 feet away from the S4B, and that distance should be closing.
Is the focus good enough, Joe, that you can see all the glittering debris? We've seen some debris, Fred. The booster itself is a little bit bright. What's your f-stop? Okay, I'm at 22. Why don't you go up a click and let us have a look at that? Okay, you're at 44. Okay, let's stay there for now, and I assume you're in peak. Take care. 13 Houston, recommend rate 2 on the BMEGs. Thank you.
Fred Hayes is manipulating the TV camera. We haven't determined yet which window of the command module we're looking out of. Jack Swigert in the left-hand couch maneuvering the spacecraft command module into position for the docking.
It's getting bigger.
As you might know, Joe, I got the center seat again. I can't see a thing.
Too bad.
I gave him the TV monitor.
Now this view of the Saturn third stage and the lunar module is coming to us from about 5,000 miles beyond Earth. The spacecraft and S4B traveling at a speed of about 22,900 feet per second at this time.
Yeah, I'll be moving the TV here directly. I'm going to pull it out of its bracket, Joe. 13 Houston, did you call? All right, John, be moving the TV to get a better shot here. Move it out of its bracket. Okay, Fred. It's just beginning to cut off at the bottom, but it's still a very good picture. That's a good picture, Fred. Yeah, we're just about there. About 10 more feet now. Roger. Everything looks pretty good down in the S4B too. The shroud still looks intact down there. Good deal. There's really quite a bit of detail in this picture. Okay, we've got 2 barber poles. Houston, roger. Okay, you should be able to see down into the portion of the IU right now, Joe. Fred, Houston, we'd like to try going to average on the TV for a minute or so. Okay, you got average, and little yellow dust cap just floated by in front of us. Yeah, we see it top of the screen. And Fred, after a few minutes of this, at your convenience, we could use some interior shots if you get the time, and if the lighting is good. Okay. And 13 Houston, the S4B vent times are nominal as in the flight plan within a few seconds.
We're hard docked, Houston.
Roger, understand hard dock. Good deal.
At T plus 4 hours, the astronauts were ready to remove the lunar module from the third stage.
Okay, how's that picture looking back outside now, Joe? We're getting ready for limb extraction. Okay, that looks pretty good, Fred.
Houston, this is 13. Do we have a go for Pyro 1?
13 Houston, affirmative. Your go for Pyro Alarm. Hey, Joe, when we went back up and rechecked the tunnel there, we found 2 latches that weren't cocked, and we reset them. Oh, roger that, check. Joe, I got a beautiful view of
there, about wind to 1. By the way, yeah, the wind came through in real good shape. Wind to 5 looks real clean, so I'm kind of hopeful that high-con stuff will be really good.
Good deal. Okay, 13 Houston, your go for LEMSEP whenever you're ready.
Roger.
Okay, 13 Houston, correction on that, your go for LEMSEP at the nominal time, and or later, we don't want it early.
Okay, Joe, we'll do it at 4:01, 00.
Roger.
We're now about 2 minutes away from the scheduled CSM LEM ejection time. At that time, the crew will activate a switch which separates which fires pyrotechnics, separating tie-down straps and the spring actuators at the attach points of the LEM landing gear. Will eject the LEM and the command and service module at a velocity of about 0.8 of a foot per second. This will be coupled then with a short burn with the reaction control system jets, adding another 0.4 of a foot per second to the separation velocity, giving them a total separation velocity of 1.2 feet per second.
Okay, we're about ready to pull the LEM out, Joe.
Okay, 13.
There she comes. Okay, it looks like we're clear, Joe.
Okay, looks good. It's weird because we get the TV about 10 seconds after you call it.
Lovell, Hayes, and Swigert are now heading toward the moon in their docked command and lunar modules. Everything is going smoothly on this routine flight to the moon. Salutations from the foothills of North Carolina. This is Michael Annis, your host, and I wanted to say thanks for listening to episode number 264 of the Space Rocket History Podcast, entitled Apollo 13, Orbit, Translunar Injection, Docking, and Extraction. Hope you enjoyed this episode. It was a pleasure to bring it to you. I want to give a big shout out to all my longtime listeners. Thanks for staying subscribed, and extend a warm welcome to my new listeners. I'm glad you're here. Today, we salute my rocket emoji donors. These donors have donated for at least 2 years in a row and receive a rocket emoji next to their name on the donors list. Thank you, rocket emoji donors, for your continued support. Okay, I had a few afterthoughts about this week's episode. First, we may be a day or two late on next week's episode. We will have an episode next week, but it may be Friday or Saturday before it gets posted because I have to go out of town again. I want to credit my sources: A Man on the Moon by Andrew Chaikin, Failure is Not an Option by Gene Kranz, The Apollo 13 Flight Journal, Lost Moon by Jim Lovell, Kennedy Space Center and Johnson Space Center, and Wikipedia. Well, Apollo 13 sure is proceeding along smoothly after that one glitch where the second stage center engine cut off too early. Mission Control took that long sigh of relief, hoping that they had survived their only glitch for this mission. Yes, as Gilligan used to tell the skipper, from here on out, it looks like smooth sailing. In case you didn't catch that, that is a reference to the TV show Gilligan's Island. It was made in the 1960s, and it was groovy. Gilligan used to make that comment just before disaster struck. Okay, I have posted some pictures and the audio for this episode on my homepage, spacerockethistory.com. Hope you check that out. We were pleased to receive 3 donations to support the podcast over the past week. Christian O. donated at the Orion level. Russell J. from Georgia donated at the Mercury level. Lawrence W. sent in another donation this year and moved to the Mercury level with rocket emoji. Our Patreon donors are still at 175 with a goal of reaching 218 by the end of the year, and our overall donors are at 303. For those of you who are enjoying the content provided here and have not donated yet in 2018, please consider supporting the podcast if you're financially able. Keep in mind, Space Rocket History is entirely listener funded. I depend upon your financial support to keep the podcast going. To support the podcast, go to the homepage, spacerockethistory.com, click on the orange donate button or the Patreon link. All donors are rewarded with their name on the donors page at the level they choose to donate. For those of you who have already donated for 2018, thank you very much. This week, we are giving away the new official SRH logo magnet. It is 3 inches in diameter, round, and will stick to most refrigerators. To select the winner, Mrs. SRH gave every 2018 donor a number. Then she put them in the Google random number generator and got the number for Pete Smith. Pete Smith, if you would email me, mike@spacerockethistory.com, tell me your address and I will mail this out to you. Okay, folks, that's all I have for this week. Remember, next week's episode may be a day or two late, like Friday or Saturday. So long for now.